This is going to have absolutely nothing to do with the coronavirus epidemic. This is entitled Letters. I just read a book called Written in History, subtitled Letters That Changed the World. I don't know if that lofty claim is true, but I did enjoy the book. It was interesting to read letters written by famous people, hearing them come alive in their own words. Some of them were in love, some of them were ordering executions, some of them were about to die. Anton Chekhov was represented by a graphic report of his time with a Japanese prostitute. Gustave Flaubert wrote up a very funny account of a day in a bathhouse. Since these letters, as indicated by the title of the book, were mostly connected to an historical event, as opposed to a Japanese prostitute in a bathhouse, many of them were written by kings and queens, presidents, emperors, and autocrats. Many of the writers seemed a bit crazy, and it also seems to be true that power has an amplifying effect on crazy. Crazy and power go together quite comfortably, an alarming proposition for anyone in the vicinity. Also, it seems the ends of power are rarely realized. There are letters in this book written by conquerors, generals, and tyrants, and at the ends of their lives, they face massive regret that their lives were in vain, that they tried to do so much, and yet, as one man tallied it, he had perhaps experienced 14 days of happiness in total in his entire lifetime. In a very basic way, I did not mind thinking about letters in general. Letter writing is now an almost lost art, mostly forgotten or gone out of use and fashion. Seriously, who writes letters now? I think the most recent letter included in the book was by Donald Trump as president to the Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In any event, the document is rarely created today. By its nature, it is intensely personal, usually confidential, a private communication, intimate, sometimes casual and breezy, sometimes formal and official, and not written today. It somehow seems a great loss. The author of the book precedes each letter or exchange of letters with a brief history that supplies the context as well as something of the characters involved. And I found that these pieces were often as involving as the letters themselves. I knew many of the names, but not really so much about who they were, so his work was enlightening. In the letters, when the writer and the reader are in agreement, or in love, all is well. Many of the love letters were very playful, even childish. But if that feeling of accord is not the case, even if they are parent and child, the effect of the words, however eloquently they may have been written, is basically null and void. Time and again, this is true. "Don't waste your breath or your ink," would seem to be good advice, also going unheeded. The urge to communicate, the core of any letter, is and to persuade is strong. For example, Marie Antoinette has no letter in the book. She does not seem capable of producing a good one, and probably was not patient enough to sit down and write one. But she does appear as a recipient, twice. One is by her one is by her brother to his brother about his attempt at primary sexual counseling between Marie and her husband, the noted fop Louis XVI. The birds and bees were never described more practically, but he does not expect any improvement in their sexual relations as a result of his intervention and instruction. Similarly, her mother wrote to her, also despairingly, having observed her in the French court, seeing everything, all her bad, flighty, and infantile behavior, and her certain future ruin as well. Because she loves her child and knows her too well, her only hope is that she will die and not have to witness that downfall. She did die and did not have to see it, just as well, for as her mother thought, Marie had truly paved her way to catastrophe. She and Louis died at the guillotine. There is an exchange of letters between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, neither giving an inch, both filled with reasons and pride, and it's too easy to see the inevitable collision. Hamilton sees it too. He wrote, "I can only regret the circumstances and must abide the consequences." He fired into the air, and Burr killed him. Catherine II of Russia wrote a sweet letter to her lover, Prince Potemkin. Caesar Augustus was tender with a son. The letters were grouped into various categories like love, family, creation. The ones in courage were especially moving. I think the longest group, and maybe the best, was the last, for goodbyes. Goodbyes are tough to write. Rarely does a person want to do it, to say goodbye, to make an end. Either acknowledging the true end of life or mirroring it in a parting. Such letters can be filled with passion, the writer suffering, overcome with emotion, wanting to confirm that the relationship existed and now must close, as the letter must, as life itself.